sound. All right. Okay, this is take two. J. Paul Mitchell interviewing Joe Russell. It's March the 17th, 2008. The Muncie Middletown Economic Development Oral History Project. Okay, and you are?
Joe Russell, Delaware County farmer, lifelong resident of Delaware County, except for some time at Purdue and some time in Alaska as an engineer. So had multiple generations of my family in farming, I think dating back to 1810, so a lot of roots in agriculture.
1810, that's almost 200 years as I recall.
Yeah,
wow.
That's Indiana Territory. My great-great-great-grandfather started farming in Franklin County. That was before Delaware County was organized. And he was, they said he was one of the few with some college education, so they made him a teacher. He was paid 2 to 3 barrels of corn per student per year, which a barrel's a little less than 3 bushels, so for about 6 to 9 bushels he was his payment, which would be in today's, even with the recent run up in corn, would be $30 to $45 a year per student. So but he farmed and taught school, and he said he plowed with the reins in one hand and a gun in the other for the wild animals or the Indians. So it's wild times, but
He was ready for anything.
yep.
Yeah.
Is it working?
Still working.
Good.
Still working. Okay, well, what has been your involvement in Muncie area economic development? When did you first get started, and why and how?
It probably started in the 1980s as just being a farmer, and probably through Farm Bureau more than anything. Is just the Farm Bureau leadership at that time. I remember saying things like, "If you don't get involved and defend your industry or stand up for it, no one else will." And I thought that was pretty wise. So at that time, I realized there's a lot of issues that impact the farm that are not part of the farm. So I started becoming more aware of property tax issues and government, and that was probably the basis of getting involved, and became Farm Bureau president, and that seemed like from there you end up serving on a few other committees, and so was in the Chamber of Commerce. I think about 1993 I joined that, served on that for 6 years, and was eventually the chairman of it. So that certainly made me aware of what was going on. Chaired the comprehensive land use plan, which was a pretty good way to observe Delaware County from the 30,000 foot level to kind of see what's going on and what we maybe want it to look like in the future, and drawing out that map. And then I guess that led into, I always told people, tried to get me to run for a government elected office, and I always said, "Oh, I'm too busy doing everything else, but at some point when I have time, I'll run." And so I held my word, thinking, "Oh, I won't win," but I got on county council in 1999 and 2000, filling a remaining term of a member, and then defeated in 2000 election, but re-elected in 2004. So I'm currently on the county council, and that has a strong, or certainly, county council's a position we just deal with the finance of the county, but we have some impact on what goes on and that can impact economic development. So it just kind of one event led to the other, and that's how I got involved. And then probably also being the Purdue background and not realizing everything I learned in the classroom really related to the real world. Eventually you get out and you see how all the pieces of the puzzle start fitting together, and so that's kind of got me to where I am today.
Mm-hmm. In your first experience with the Chamber of Commerce, how well did a farmer fit in?
Well, I guess one reason I took up their offer to serve on the chamber is because I felt like agriculture was pretty well underserved, in representation, the thought was, oh, the chamber is just the downtown people or the business people, and agriculture was not important, not a, really was an overlooked part of our economy. And I thought, well, here's a good opportunity to represent agriculture, and I served on other committees where I just always felt like the token farmer. So, oh, let's include someone from agriculture. But it turned out to be a good opportunity to mention the importance of agriculture and as a job creator, and probably just some of the stuff we're seeing today, and with agriculture being pretty visible, it's probably had some of its roots back then.
What kind of things in the agricultural economy side and economic development side first kind of got some acceptance as, yeah, well, yeah, maybe that is a good idea?
Well, the Chamber of Commerce is all about creating jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And even though agriculture has been around for 10,000 years, it's been downsizing for those 10,000 years. So we're kind of crossways anyway, in terms of we weren't bringing new jobs in, but we were investing a lot of money and opportunities. So the focus was not so much on the production agriculture as trying to find something to add value to the products we raise. Delaware County is in my career and my lifetime has been noted for, we're pretty good at producing the raw products, corn, soybeans, hogs, but for the most part it was sent elsewhere to add value. So the key on the chamber was trying to add value locally. And I mean, a long time ago, Marhofers was here and added value, created jobs, but they left probably in the 1970s, and agriculture's had a void ever since. So so it's more focused on something to add value. I think in the comprehensive land use plan, that was significant to identify agriculture as an important use, and trying to preserve farmland, and to preserve farmland you must preserve farming, and to preserve farming it must be profitable enough for those farmers to be sustainable over a long period of time. So I think what eventually came out of that would be the basis for the not only just preserving zones that we should keep in production, but also things like the ag park, and the focus for the industrial center is let's go after ag jobs, something to add value to agricultural products, and that I'm glad to see that that's been their focus to this day.
Mm-hmm. Now, how successful were you in preserving rural land for agriculture? Let me put it that way. And how well has that worked in Delaware County?
Well, I guess on the comprehensive land use plan, it's a roadmap with just general guidelines of how to get from where we were to where we want to be. And the agricultural preserving farmland was probably one of the more difficult parts of that, because we had a subcommittee of farmers, and a lot of farmers have their retirement packages tied up in their land. So there's a difference between a 25-year-old farmer and a 75-year-old farmer in the way they look at the resource. So the 25-year-old farmer thinks, oh, they should all be protected and saved so I have someplace to farm for a career, where the 75-year-old farmer is saying, if times get tough and my spouse is in a nursing home, I should be able to sell off a corner of that to pay the bill. So that was the dilemma we're in. So what came about was not really any agreement on lot size, but just the broad recognition that it's worth saving, and try to keep the housing in areas that are already served by sanitary sewer, or it's just really expensive to sprawl in a very sparsely populated manner, because extending the utilities is difficult. So we focused on growth around existing municipal areas, not only Muncie, certainly trying to infill the quilt pattern of voids in Muncie with housing, but also places like Gaston, Eaton, Selma to encourage people to live near those small towns instead of just building houses out here in the middle of cornfields all the time. So I think we're pretty successful in that you don't see a lot of new homes going up in rural areas. I mean, when I look at my farm to the north and the east, it's exactly the way it was when I was a kid in the 1950s in terms of only some of the houses have been torn down and rebuilt in the same location, but I can only see I can just see part of one house from here that's about 2.5 miles away. So we've done a pretty good job of preserving that. I've heard the comprehensive land use plan quoted multiple times from both sides saying, well, the comprehensive plan supports not doing this, and the comprehensive land supports doing this. So the guidelines are no better than the elected officials in place or appointed officials like a plan commission member to enforce them. So I feel like agriculture's kind of held its own in terms of preserving farming as an opportunity, although it's being tested with the expansion of the livestock sector, which isn't a big factor in Delaware County, but that could be an upcoming test. Is even though when the first settlers came here, our economic development plan was agriculture, and that involved raising corn and probably hogs, and that's what developed all this land. Our pattern of roads, railroads, small towns, that could be serviced within a easy ride from a horse. Little towns like Schuyler and Royerton and all those little type DeSotos that popped up. Well, that was agriculture was the basis of those, and so because transportation's changed, the need for those has changed too. But that was the basis of agriculture, and it's still an important part of this county, and I think it should be a high priority to preserve that.
One development that has taken some farmland but still preserved it as farmland is the Academy of Model Aeronautics. Can you comment about that and what that means? Because they have a tremendous amount of land, but they farm a bunch of it, or they don't. They lease it out.
Well, I think when you look at the history of that, they first proposed building that in northern Delaware County on some of the best farm ground in Delaware County, and some of the neighbors were concerned not so much of the loss of farm ground as they didn't want the infusion of all these people and tourists and weekend events that would just clog the roads and create havoc for those that are trying to farm. So somewhere along the line they identified a different parcel that was closer to Muncie, closer to restaurants, hotels, the amenities that should benefit those that were coming. So I think the process did find a better location as far as the overall scheme of things, but the fact that they wanted large acreage, they were saying we want a buffer between us and them, and then so it becomes an issue. What do we do with the buffer? And I'm glad to see that it's still retained in a lot of agricultural uses. It's not. It just doesn't have to be corn or soybeans to have some agricultural advantage. There's other crops that are, in their case they don't want tall crops to interfere with airplanes being lost. So I think they're able to find a good location here, and that was some kind of land that could have been in transition, being near Muncie, and I think. But
out of the path of growth, since I live right next door to them, it hasn't been a high growth area. These were a group of people, as I said at the beginning. They've been chased out of every place they fly airplanes. All over the country. They got a nice place to play, and then someone sells the land and builds some subdivisions, and they get chased out of there. But what they're doing right now is there's some variety. Some of it is just mowed grass. But adjoining us, they plant corn and beans. They rotate them back and forth. So that it is kind of interesting. There's some corn growing right up. So I have seen people have to go into the cornfields looking for a stray airplane.
Yeah. Well, we've even found an airplane that was lost. It'd probably be about 10 miles east. And the guy had a tag on it, and we were picking corn, and there was this little airplane out there. Luckily, it didn't go through the combine, but the guy was from Chicago, and he said he was flying at the AMA, so he appreciated us and gave us a gift certificate for a local restaurant in appreciation. But I think AMA owns a resource that has a lot of acres, and if they can turn some of those acres into revenue generating acres by growing corn or beans on the outer fringe, and even though they keep it on grass, that's a pretty good management tool, and certainly better than just letting it grow in weeds or wild. And even today with the talk of carbon credits, that's keeps the carbon there. Maybe they'll receive some carbon credits for sequestering carbon through their land use plan. So, and it's just a nice use between. I mean, they look at it as a buffer between their airplanes and the people, and agriculture looks at it probably as a buffer between the city and the rural areas, having a use like that. Even though it was ahead of the comprehensive land use plan, I believe it kind of became a model for it. Excuse me.
Yeah, have there been any other people following that kind of model? They've been there since, they broke ground in 1991.
Yeah.
So.
And the Daleville area is probably because of potential growth from Indianapolis following the interstate. There, I think there could be some interest in managing large acreage that way, where with buffers, and so I've heard it discussed through economic development circles that, but that AMA, I guess the creation of the ag park is a little bit in terms of it's 800 acres, but there's no way every square foot would be covered by some agricultural industrial type process. We realized that probably 10 or 20% of it could be developed, but the remaining 80 or 90% would be buffer, which would stay an agricultural crop. So in a way, that would kind of be the model. We just, today's society doesn't. I think they demand a buffer, or it makes it. Of course, people can be opposed to anything and everything, but the buffer is kind of the medium medium ground of getting these things through.
Well, as someone who had a badly managed pig barn sty on the old AMA property, that was, of course, one of the first things they had to do was to remediate that, because they were in violation of just about everything, including our yard. It was so for us, having that turned into a tool shed for the equipment was much better than what we'd had to. Summers we had to run in the house. It couldn't stand it. Yeah, about an hour a day. It was just so bad. It was like being in it.
Yeah,
and they wasn't taking good care of it, I think.
As I recall, that was really a small hog operation that was unregulated by today's standards, that it wouldn't come under the CAFO or the CFO restrictions. But and it's funny, a lot of people want to go back to the way we raised pigs in the 1950s or 1960s as the model, but they weren't the best neighbors back then. And you can raise a lot of hogs in a small area today that really has a footprint of a lot less hogs than compared to the old days, that on odor and water, and I mean, it's a highly regulated industry. But that's funny that people want to go back to the old days, but the old days weren't what they really were.
You mentioned the ag park. Could you just describe that a little bit? Where is it located? How big is it, and how did it come together?
Well, Ag Park consists of about 806 acres, northern Delaware County, kind of on the border, on the line between Hamilton and Union Township, near the town of Shidler. In fact, it kind of surrounds the town of Shidler, but its origins were probably back to the I know my time on the chamber, thinking if we're going to attract business, we have to have a place for them to locate. And agricultural businesses don't necessarily have to be in an industrial center. They can be, a lot of times because they're surrounded by production areas, they might want a location in a rural area. And knowing that, and serving on the chamber and through county government, I guess you compete with about 15,000 other economic development entities that are all trying to sell their location as the best and come look at us. So in a way that becomes the worm on the hook to go fishing, trying to find some agricultural business to come. So what's different about the ag park is there's 10 individuals that own what's that 806 acres, and they were all in agreement that if we can attract something that benefits agriculture and is good for the community, then we'd be willing to sell our land for the betterment of our community. So it has to meet that criteria of better for agriculture, better for community, and the 10 owners have say so in what comes. But what's different about the ag park and just an industrial park is it has to have a relationship with agriculture by adding value to the products flowing in or byproducts of that operation. So we went ahead and thought, well, if it's a good idea, we'll see if it survives, and it made it through the Plan Commission and created its own land use designation as an AB zone, agricultural bio zone. So it became a living, breathing entity in terms of a place to attract businesses. The 10 owners haven't changed in one bit from the early days in terms of if it's beneficial, then there'll be a go. But they ran into the typical NIMBY, not in my backyard mentality of a few in the area, which in Delaware County we're used to that, whatever's proposed. So still, if it's a good idea, it'll survive, and so far it has. And in terms of it has allowed Terry Murphy and the chamber to bring people in to look at the area. There's a proposed ethanol plant that's still viable. Have an option right now. So there's a possibility of that. There's been other in the bioenergy field looking and food processing. So it's going to come down to it's not just the 10 of us that are out trying to sell it. It's just another tool in the toolbox for economic development people to say, hey, come look at Delaware County. And the other factor is it should have some regional benefit in that if agriculture is going to do well in East Central Indiana by adding value instead of shipping product out, and if it has significant number of employees, then Muncie has a lot of workers. Then it makes a lot of sense to have something near a population center, but also has access to significant acres to bring products in. So we just felt like it was a good location. I mean, the reason it's there is not because I own part of it or my family or friends, and it's because of when we analyzed where in Delaware County, probably the railroad was a centerpiece of it, but also access to Highway 3 and Highway 28, natural gas, industrial size supplies of natural gas on two sides of it, nearby municipal water and sanitary, electricity up and down the railroad. So there's a lot of layers of infrastructure that seem to overlap there, and that's why that was designated as a potential for an ag park. Now, there's the people in the town of Schuyler. I mean, there's a few people that are upset by it, but if you'd read the newspaper, you'd think it were all of them, but it's just a few. There's probably less upset people than there are ag park owners, but I guess it lets us debate whether the value of economic development. It gives us a bit of a black eye when the newspaper reports in certain ways that there's these people all concerned, but I guess we're forward thinking in terms of if agriculture is going to benefit and the community is going to benefit, we have to make sacrifices in land to make that happen. And other people, I think, so we see a vision into the future that includes jobs and agriculture being better off, and our opposition, I think, mostly just sees their backyard going, oh, I'm afraid of change, or I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the fear of the unknown. That
Right.
you know, the rumors of if an ethanol plant, everything would be dead within 3 to 5 miles of it, and Delta High School would have to close. It was fear driven, and there's some people that just believe that.
Like to do that.
Yeah.
When did that get started?
It was probably 2004 is when the well, 2005 was when it was pushed forward in terms of trying to see if we could change zoning and move forward. So 2005 and 2006 were the main years for that.
So as of now, 2008 March, it's an available property.
Right.
That is a part of the bank of
Right.
those things.
Yeah, and
not, but hasn't. You're envisioning multiple uses. I mean, there's enough land there for more than one.
It's there's kind of 4 quadrants to it that could be utilized in terms of you know, initially we thought like a quadrant for bioenergy and one for food processing and one for maybe research and one for kind of a manufacturing or processing in an ag field. So yeah, there's plenty of room for entities to come, and so we have high standards and high expectations. So we're just but it's out of our hands to market it. So it's just kind of wait and see. And, you know, driving back and forth to Purdue for 30 years, Frankfurt's a good example. You just slowly see development that was planned between Frankfurt and the interstate, or what's happening around Lafayette. I mean, there's some communities that are doing it right, and this community needs to kind of study those and go, hey, what are we doing wrong and what do we need to do right? And there's nothing wrong with copying someone that's successful, and that's an avenue, the ag park, that could benefit the community.
What your conversation thus far indicates somebody probably from outside coming in to do that rather than local investors, or
I mean, to develop the ag park?
Yeah.
Well, it could be anything from local. I know there's been some interest in a few local, but a lot of these businesses that would add value are multi-million-dollar, and so I would guess it would most likely come from beyond Delaware County as far as making things happen. But
what would be?
And it could even, I mean, it's even global in perspective, in that all of a sudden, when I was a kid, you think of agriculture as being something in your 2 or 3 mile radius of your farm, and now it's global in perspective. You know, a day doesn't go by that I hear what's going on in Brazil or Europe or China in terms of agriculture, not only on the input side but the output side. And the ag park should be, even though it's less than, you know, it's just a fraction of the land in Delaware County, like 1/3 of 1%, but it should allow us to play on the global stage of agriculture.
Do you see any obstacles that Muncie has, other than, you know, people who don't want something in their backyard, or any benefits or pluses that it has?
Well, I think a plus would be the connection with Ball State and then Purdue University as being should be a good selling point, because a lot of these places, and Ivy Tech, in that if someone's coming in and expanding a relatively new field of agriculture, like the biofuels, for example, it involves training people to do something different. And we have access through Ball State, Ivy Tech, and Purdue. And someone coming from far away, I think, would be impressed with the fact that we have those resources to help us make that happen. And then also the local economic development forces or players in that. I think we have some advantage over some smaller towns. But yeah, I think there's some inherent benefits that are for a location here versus other counties, more rural counties.
You see any, again, other than the usual, you know, NIMBY kind of thing, do you see any disadvantages that need to be addressed?
Only, I mean, only if we're successful and attract something very large that would become a dominant land use. let's say ethanol, for example, used a lot of corn. So a lot of acres, if it would be committed to corn. If something comes that would need those acres, they'd have to be able to buy those acres away from corn for their processing. So, I mean, good news is you may have an ethanol plant. The bad news is that might make some other community more attractive for some vegetable acres. But that's those are the kind of problems we want. And I can't believe it would pin us down into such a narrow field of production that it would exclude us from other stuff. Agriculture is pretty big and can change fast. So I don't. You want value added in your backyard. And I gave a talk to Daleville Lions Club about the impact of something like an ethanol plant, where the old model I showed them 3 years of corn, and the 3 years of corn pre-biofuels was worth 4 cents, and today, because the demand for corn is worth 7 cents, you're through an ethanol plant, it's worth 16 cents, which 3 years of corn will power your car for 1 mile and have enough feed left over to make a pork fritter sandwich. But the time it went through the whole process of from farmer to ethanol to livestock to processing the pork, that what used to be 4 cents came back as 30 cents. So that's what the ag park's all about. It's keeping those dollars by adding value locally. I mean, I kid people, it's almost like printing money locally if you can keep those dollars here, and it is. So everything that could potentially be in the ag park is going to be somewhere. And what we're saying is, why not our community? Well, why not now?
What role does government play in that kind of thing? First, just generally in something like an ag park, or specifically, and then in the larger scheme of things.
Well, I think anyone that's investing millions of dollars in any business today, when they're looking for a location, it comes down to comparing one community to the other, and part of the benefits, or part of something they're looking for, is handouts in terms of, well, what can your community do for us, or what are you willing to give us? And so the state has to not favor one community over the other, but so it comes down to local advantages. Recently, the Nestle's operation in Madison County, which would have worked fine in the ag park, but their $51 million incentive package from combinations of probably local, state sources divided by their 300 workers is, I think it was $178,000 per worker incentive package. So we may had the best location, but we couldn't ante up that kind of incentive package to go out and buy jobs. So those bigger entities, that's part of the location process, is economically who has the best incentives, and then given that incentive package, is this still a good location for us to do business? So yeah, I think we're tapped into potential. Some of the people looked at the ag park, there was already discussion about state incentives and what we could do, and it's not just some of it's competition between Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky. I mean, it's not just Indiana. If you had something that's taking a raw product and turning it into a useful product, that it probably has a multi-state attraction, and since more people live east of Delaware County than west, and we always market that we're within a day's drive of 2/3 of the population, or that's part of our marketing. So it's probably gonna, if it's truly a national product, then we're competing with multi-states, and this being the first ag park in Indiana was not all bad. I mean, the Indiana State Department of Agriculture they're aware of it and they help promote it and mention it. So it still comes down to trying to position our community in such a way that we can compete on a state, a national, and a global scale.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What obstacles are there to thinking in those terms? Again, aside from don't build it next to my house.
Oh, probably just
looking at what Muncie has to offer.
What? You know,
or this area, the East Central Indiana.
Well, maybe I think the only obstacle, or the main obstacle, is just it's a different world we live in today, and it's a different way of doing business, and it's not like if you'd use a Marhofers as an example, the world's changed a lot since Marhofers was started, and it deals with relationships beyond Delaware County borders, and that's probably the biggest obstacle, is get people thinking. And I mean, what if there was, you look at Red Gold in Orestes, very successful, something that would also work in the ag park, but there might be an infusion of some Hispanic workers. Well, that's a different way of thinking. Is that, we're not saying good, bad, we're just saying it's the way it is today. We could have ownership of something in the ag park that's from Europe. So all of a sudden, we have to think differently in relationships that we have in Delaware County with the business world.
That's true, and for example, thinking about European investors, that's true in the CAFOs in surrounding counties. Is that an obstacle in just the fact that they're not, they're foreign owners?
Well, I see kind of
for us here, is that
I see kind of a two-faced communities here that says we don't want these Dutch-owned dairies, for example, or foreign-owned livestock, yet they would turn around and welcome a Japanese or a Korean-owned manufacturing facility in their community. So to me, it just seems kind of two-faced. To maybe it's an excuse for saying. I think a lot of people, when it comes to livestock, and that's a big issue, and odor's the issue with livestock, but most people don't come out and say that. They have to wrap it around everything else. So they'll throw the foreign ownership card or Hispanic worker card, or when really it just comes down to odor. I mean, if anyone wants to invest in your community, I've always been in a position where we should have the welcome mat out for anyone and everyone that wants to come, and let them make their case. And if it's a good fit, a good idea, then maybe it'll happen here. But I hate to see, back to the NIMBY things, and the Duke Power Plant was a great example, I think, as they came proposing a $250,000 investment that would require almost zero infrastructure improvements from the county. I mean, that's rare. Do you get that? Someone that pays a lot of property tax and doesn't demand a lot of services, but they weren't even given a chance to plead their case and say, the outcry of a few people pulled the welcome mat up so fast that they, I don't know if they went to Henry County or elsewhere, but the communities that had those projects said would take another one. I mean, it was no problem at all. So, yeah, that's all I have to say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess it's kind of like, I guess during that process, it's like if you're up for a murder, if you're accused of murdering someone, the judge says, "Oh, you're guilty. We're not even going to have the trial." Well, in economic development, everyone should be able to plead their case as to why they would like to invest their money in your community, and when we have a newspaper and NIMBYism that sensationalizes the event, well, the next business that's looking at our community reads that, and they just cross us off their list. So it gives us a black eye for many years when we don't treat prospective businesses in a warm and friendly manner.
Mm-hmm. Now, in your various roles over the past 10 or 15 years, have you been involved with other economic development projects?
Well, through the chamber,
through the chamber?
quite a
or-
few, and both in unfortunately, the year I was chairman, we seemed to be a year we lost a lot of businesses. It seemed like
You don't want to take credit for that?
So yeah, I hate to say that it was my fault, but that was the year ABB left, or Westinghouse ABB. I think Ball Corp left. Delco closed down. I think maybe the manual transmission part of Borg Warner left. So I thought, one, they don't want another farmer in charge of the chamber. But most of those decisions were not made locally. They were probably made around a conference or a boardroom, a conference table far away. That and maybe it had stuff to do with, as I mentioned earlier, why would a business locate here? But you also have to ask the question, why would a business stay here? We have to put on we have to have good relations with existing businesses to keep them here, because they can leave as those other departing industries have shown us. So the best industry the best jobs to attract to Delaware County are keeping the ones we already have. And but then probably the good news about those businesses leaving, not that it's good news, but we didn't just sit back and feel sorry for ourselves. We just thought, well, we got to get busy and attract others to fill those voids, and those seeds were planted through the different economic development programs. And our 5-year programs, the 2001 and 1996, and all those. It's important you have those in place, and there it's always changing. You've got to adapt. I think serving on maybe in its origins with the chamber, but also with county government, was like Magna coming to town. I mean, thank goodness Muncie, Delaware County could still attract someone that makes auto parts, and that, I think that was a real success story. Touring their plant, they have a lot of potential to grow. I think they were opportunistic in terms of their origin was looking at the big 3 automakers and going, well, we see an opportunity for someone else to be a supplier, and I think the fact that they realize Muncie is pretty good at we have a good history of making auto parts, a trained workforce, familiar with the processes, that I'm glad we were able to attract a Magna, because they can be it's kind of a new way of doing business in the auto parts. So I enjoy the relationship with Magna, and through the county council, we have a tax abatement with them. We tour them to make sure they're in compliance. But I think that's a real success story, and they may be the only auto supplier left in Delaware County soon. That's hard to believe, but Anderson went from 22,000 GM jobs to 0.
Mm-hmm.
Delaware County's gone from a bunch of auto jobs to 400 or so in a few years.
Kaheen is the other.
Oh yeah, Kaheen. Being that was a nice event, because that represented our ability to attract beyond the borders of this country someone to invest in Delaware County, and that was its success was probably from the early days of the demise of the others is when that came about. That was good. So yeah, we still have 2, I guess, auto workers.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think they came?
I think they're able to
really attracted them.
I think our location, our history of working in the auto industry, and our ability to get qualified workers in a big enough area to meet their needs is what came about. So I think we don't get everyone that comes looking at us to build here, but some. I guess what we were selling and what they were buying, they reached agreement on. So Kaheen and Magna were. It's nice to have a few success stories along the line.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that when you lose a big business like a Delco or Chevrolet or Borg Warner, the headline is 1,000 jobs leaving, but usually don't show up in the headlines are all the little businesses that supply them that
Yes.
are collateral damage to losing those. So we've seen that through the small tool and die places. Some of them losing jobs. Although I think to Hinman Engineering that when Borg Warner pulled out and went to Mexico, Tom Hinman said they're actually doing more business with them in Mexico than they were in Muncie. So that's the exception, not the rule. But we've seen several tool and die places, small shops close down because they lost access to supplying the big ones, and that's why it's so important for us to be competitive and attract a few of these. I think we're seeing a little bit of the potential of Honda in Greensburg as an opportunity for some local employment in supplying. I know Newcastle, Winchester, they had this 52-mile radius that they said they would operate in, which I think Muncie was 60 miles. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's why they said that, but I think we have to be. The old days of promoting Delaware County and Muncie and Delaware County is just keeping it within our borders. I think today we realize if something happens in Madison County or Randolph County or even Decatur County, like Honda, for example, we have to be supportive of it because it could mean jobs coming back to us and not we. And there's some efforts to. I know the Energize East Central Indiana, and I think is a great idea because you need someone to kind of oversee those turf wars between county lines and cities. That someone needs to say, hey, let's find a good location for this business in East Central Indiana because all of East Central Indiana will benefit. And that's some of the thinking the Ag Park too is.
Do you think that is an attitude that is changing one way or the other? That we're part of a larger region in Indiana?
Well, maybe that's our default position that when you look at your own situation and you realize maybe there's strength in numbers and we certainly compete. I guess I look at Marion County not just as Marion County, but all the donut counties around it as someone we compete with, and I think it's good for Delaware County to combine forces with all the other counties nearby and say, hey, we need to do. That's the model that seems to be working for them. Why not? So we need to do that for us, and so yeah, I think it's the evolution probably of economic development, and as we go from local to national to global, I think that's just a natural step that we have to combine forces because those that do will be rewarded. And
Is
those
it
that
happening?
don't won't.
Yeah. Do you think we're headed in that direction now with the organizations we have, with the people who are pursuing it, with the initiatives we're taking,
Well,
or are we still not there?
Well, I would say if you look back at, let's use agriculture as an example, probably building, CAFOs are pretty controversial, but and as a farmer, I'd say I'm supportive of all phases of agriculture, but I'll admit that there are some places that are better locations than others for certain entities. I think where you see a lot of livestock coming into Jay and Randolph County, for example, that's a good fit. That's a pretty rural area. They didn't have the urban sprawl, the strip houses. I mean, Delaware County has some places that CAFOs would work, but not nearly percentage-wise as Jay and Randolph County. So here's a case where they bought a feed mill in Wayne County. They're processing the corn into feed for animals in Jay and Wayne and Randolph counties. But at some point, one would think, well, maybe we need to process those hogs locally or chickens or whatever. Well, on a regional basis, you would do that where the people are, and maybe a Delaware County would be a better fit for processing, not for production. So if there were one county that included all the counties, the 7 or 8 counties in the East Central Indiana area. If we were just one county, then it wouldn't be an issue. We would go for it. Well, we're not one county, we're multiple counties, but if we have a one county mentality, then maybe we can do that. I think I ran some numbers for California. If we were divided, if we were a new state and divided on the order of California in terms of population, I think they have 58 counties or something, but Indiana would have 10 counties if it were population and 12 on geography or something like that. So our 92 county system is probably an old outdated model that, that even we're probably stuck with 92 counties, but that doesn't prevent us from thinking in terms of what if we had 8 or 10 or 15 counties in management. So I think we need to be cognizant of that fact.
What do you think are the 3 most important things that Muncie should address in its efforts to foster economic development?
Well, I guess if I were a business looking at locating here, I'd want to know the quality of the workforce. You know, are they highly educated, well-trained, technical people, or and I think that's something we could improve upon, the quality of our workers, that being a good avenue to attract businesses. Another factor would be our tax base in terms of any entity that comes. Of course, legislatively, they just maybe rearrange a lot of how we revenue streams coming in to support government services, but I think we have to. Delaware County has never been one of the more attractive as far as a tax rate basis. So I think we have to show that we're able to efficiently use our tax dollars to provide services for not only businesses but also the people. And the third issue is probably quality of life. I mean, if I were having a business here, then I want my workers to be happy, and quality of life is a bigger issue than it used to be. And I think Muncie, we do pretty well compared to the surrounding counties, but we also need to, we could do better. I mean, we always say, and if we don't have this, you can find it in Indianapolis. Well, then we don't want the business going, okay, then we'll go closer to Indianapolis. We need to, so quality of workers, the government efficiency and tax dollars and quality of life are 3 issues that I think are, we have the infrastructure and everything else. So. No, well, I just need to write a check. So. Back to that last question. So, I think Ball State is a real asset. If I were going to locate a business here, I would want my the ability for my management people to have access to educational opportunities and cultural matters. Ball State does bring speakers and entertainment. I think Ball State is, and Ivy Tech in terms of opportunities to train the workers. I think our educational, I think we have more to offer most businesses locating in Delaware County or near Delaware County than some areas, just because of Ball State and the Ivy Techs, and we are a regional center for health, education, entertainment. So those are some of the shopping. Yeah. You look at all the license plates from other counties in our mall parking lot. That's a good thing. So we need to expand on that. I guess I look at Indianapolis and what they've done to their surrounding counties. I mean, they're the axle or the hub, and you have these spokes going out to all the other Hamilton and Boone and Hancock counties. And I think Muncie, Delaware County can do that on a much smaller scale as we reach out into the Jay County, Portlands, and Winchesters, and Hartford cities, and Newcastle. We need to copy whatever others are doing successfully, and I think we're in a pretty good position to do that.
But I need to go to the bank before my granddaughter gets here, because then I have her for the day.
I thought she'd be here by now.
Well, I talked to him, he said he was running a little late.
Okay. There. Cash flow. Get checks with this hand, write them. They just seem to disappear.
Yeah, that's the way it works.
Yeah, maybe one aspect of back to agriculture that Delaware County has to offer. I mean, 3/4 of our land is still agricultural, and probably the old way of thinking in terms of from the early 1800s to recently that our agricultural land was just out there raising crops until something more important came up, and we let houses pop up and not a sparse urban sprawl. I mean, just the old mindset of just wait till something more important comes up. Well, I think our new way of thinking is we're not maybe the old way of thinking in terms of we were our economies were based on petroleum, oil, and bending metal. We take these minerals, so we're long on chemistry and physics to create jobs in the old way of thinking, and maybe the new way we need to look at our community is, and the agricultural community is, we're in the energy business. Don't think of our county as 3/4 of it just being farm ground, but 3/4 of this county can be utilized as solar collectors. I mean, we instead of corn or beans or wheat, we have the opportunity to capture about 170,000 acres of sunlight and turn it into something useful for mankind. So if that's our new way of thinking, and where we were an oil mineral-based society, now we're going to be a carbohydrate or carbon-based economy in the near future, and we need to make that adjustment in terms of figuring out ways to convert sunlight into useful products for you, for the consumer. So if that's the new way of thinking, and this is instead of the old chemistry and physics way of thinking, this is certainly going to be the biological century, that we need to be in position to take advantage of that. And I think that's back to where Ball State can help us too in Purdue, but we're in the energy business in 3/4 of this county, and most people don't even realize it. But and you're seeing some wind generation farms popping up in Indiana. The significant investment in Benton County of maybe the $200 million. Randolph County is maybe going to announce something today about wind generation, but the 3/4 of the wind in Delaware County is on our farms. 3/4 of the sunlight on our farms. 3/4 of the water that falls on our county, it's on our farm. So somewhere in there is a new way of thinking that we need to get rid of the old way of thinking, and given those three, what's happening on 3/4 of our land, how can we position ourselves to take advantage of it to create jobs locally, improve the quality of life locally? We're blessed with some of the best soils in the world, a climate that allows us to grow a wide variety of crops, and a rainfall pattern that we usually don't have to irrigate, and yet with technology we're able to get rid of surplus water. I mean, earlier we were talking about positioning your community in a competitive position to attract businesses. Those are assets that should be very attractive to, and then combining that with our geographical location close to 2/3 of the population or whatever, those are new ways to market Delaware County, and let's get beyond the old ways and concentrate on the new ways.
What would be the key to doing that? And do you have any sense that your message is people are being receptive to it, and that the economic development efforts may be turning in that direction?
Well, I think so. I know the focus of the last economic development plan had a very
Vision
2011 is very committed to expanding upon our agricultural basis. I guess you look at Europe has always had land constraints, high population, less land to compared to this country where land just seems to be so plentiful. You look at what goes on in Europe, and we tend to, what they do now we do in 20 years. So why not? You look at what they've done in biofuels and adding value through agriculture, and that's the direction we need to be going. But by doing that, back to the global economies. I heard recently there's going to be 1 billion more middle-class citizens on the world by 2012. I mean, that's not that far away. But when people move up from the lower class to middle class, they all seem to want to have a better diet, which is protein, food stuff that Delaware County should be in a good position to supply that. They seem to use more energy, and we're somewhat in the energy business with the potential to make biofuels. So those are, and then the niche markets in what they can afford to buy. For example, a tofu operation or something might. Why would we have done that 30 years ago? But stuff like that may have a market today. You look at Japan's population of negative population growth. They don't have young people coming on board to fill all the jobs, to pay the taxes. I can see why Japan would be looking at investing in places that have land and have people to make products that they use. So you combine all that, the global aspects, and you look at the resources we offer locally, and it makes sense that should be our marketing plan. So I think the Terry Murphy at the Chamber certainly understands that. Roy Budd at Energize East Central Indiana understands that. Purdue understands that. I think Ball State understands that. It's a big I guess our economy it's big, kind of like driving a semi. If you've ever driven a semi, when you're going down the road, you need to look far down the road to anticipate problems, because you just don't stop on a dime with the semi. So you have, and that's kind of the way our economy is. We need to have long vision to avoid and anticipate problems, so we can take evasive action long before we get there, versus sports car mentality where we just zoom in and out of the traffic and go from one problem to one opportunity to one. We need that. I think we need to have that kind of big truck driving mentality as we go forward. But we need to be able to have a little bit of that sports, I guess, the sports car ability to pounce when needed. But whether, I guess I'm 55 now, but you wonder why, when you're young, what's the value of sports? Well, it's to win a game, or you don't realize the importance of teamwork and goal setting and all that. But all those different things they teach you in your youth, and I think there was a reason they want some of us to figure that out and connect the dots, and we have some pretty good people on board that see the same vision. Then maybe we'll succeed. One other aspect on a global scene would be our trade agreements that we have with other, back to the global aspects. There was NAFTA, there's the trade agreements with Peru and Colombia and South Korea, that those should come back to reward of Delaware County if we do our homework, because we can produce a product that the world wants. So we, you know, we have certain people that are anti-trade agreements and NAFTAs and all those things, but we need to go, well, let's look at this not from a selfish individual standpoint, but how will this benefit our community? So it's kind of encouraging as we move to a global economy.
Yeah. Is this happening in Muncie, in this area?
What, the global perspectives? Just a second.
Well, yeah.
Try something this time. Throw the legs. Thanks a lot. So is this happening in Muncie? I think you'll see. Recently there were trade missions to Japan and Taiwan and Korea that I think the powers to be realized that yes, this is what needs to be happening. And you know, we've had some interest from Europe in the ag park, or I mean that 50 years ago people go, where's that country? I mean, it's just in the midst of World War II, it's hard to believe that some of what used to be enemies are friends and trade partners now, and the Cold War, that those former Soviet Union countries are pretty valuable opportunities to grow our local economy.
How would you rate Muncie and its leadership now in terms of recognizing change and taking steps to deal with that?
Well, I think previously Dan Cannon, the mayor, was pretty receptive to doing that. I mean, he made some of those trade missions, and as people would come, foreign groups would come here, he would always host and make sure they got a good glimpse of life. And you know, a lot of times foreign people think of, oh, United States, that's New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles. They don't think, what's a Muncie, Indiana like? So I think when they come here, I think we do a pretty good job of showing them what a small town and quality of life, and they would usually include agriculture in those visits. So I think we're a pretty good host when foreign entities come here to look, but also we need to go on their turf and understand what their culture and what it takes to do business with them. It's a two-way street, and I'm being on the financial side of the county. People go, why would we invest money, taxpayer money, in foreign trips to attract business? Well, I think if they're asking those questions, that tells me those are people that just don't understand the bigger picture, and so I hope we never cave in to political pressure from people saying, "Oh, don't spend money on foreign trips." I hope they realize the value of that investment in those trips, that potentially could make the world smaller and bring someone back to this area. I mean, I love when foreign groups come here. I learn from them. I remember a group from China. You know, I lined up my farm machinery from horse-drawn to modern, and they gathered around. And this is probably 10 years ago. They gathered around the walking plow because it had two handles on it instead of one. And I asked, well, do you pull the plow with oxen or horses? And they said, oh, sometimes oxen, but mostly people. I mean, that told me that those people they would never adapt to our kind of agriculture, where so few can be so productive. When you have hundreds of millions of people in some countries producing agricultural products, you realize if they don't have anything else for them to do, maybe that's a pretty good system to keep their people busy. But since then, we've seen hundreds of millions of people move from rural areas of China to the cities to do manufacturing, and maybe you always question, if you were Chinese, why would you enjoy making these Happy Meal toys, or your image of the stuff they make for Americans? I think they'd have to have a kind of a warped sense of who we are from what they make for us. But the point is, they've got hundreds of millions of people doing manufacturing jobs that our people aren't doing, and that's back to putting a billion new people into middle class income, that all of a sudden they're making some little trinket, but all of a sudden they can afford to eat Indiana grown pork or import Indiana grown soybeans or tofu. So, you know, you realize that it is all connected. But will China ever develop the kind of agriculture we have? Probably not. Europe seems to be. I remember the Polish people were most impressed by the hoist on the truck that would dump hydraulically instead of shoveling it off. These professors said, I hate to say this, but you are 100 years ahead of our agriculture, and probably this is all that they could see benefit, is not having to unload the truck by hand. So I guess it tells me that when people come here, and if they tell me in agriculture, then I'm sure some of the business people community comes to the same conclusions, that, you know, if we have some inherent advantages in what we do, then we need to be taking advantage of it. And the last thing we want for some of those countries to figure out what we do then replaces what we're doing and shipping to them. We need to make sure that we can assure them that we're a reliable supplier and would be good partners in trade. I remember I gave the Chinese a little John Deere tractors as the token for their visiting, and they instantly noticed they were made in China, which I said that's what it's all about. You know, we buy manufactured products from you. You buy our corns and our agricultural products, and then we're all better off. So, so yeah, I've enjoyed hosting. I think 7 exchange students, because I get more out of it than I think they do, just because it gives me a glimpse into their world, and hopefully that's where we're doing business someday. So I think if we have people in elected and leadership positions, decision-making positions in Delaware County that see a bigger picture, then we'll move forward. And if we have people that don't, then we're on the sidelines watching other communities go, well, why did Kosciuszko County get that, or why did Decatur County get that? Well, economic development, you don't want it to be a spectator sport. You want to be in the game, and that's what it's all about.
Okay. I think that may be a good place to...
So do you think agriculture can be I guess that for 100 years we've been in the shadow of manufacturing, and as manufacturing kind of melts down and disappears, then the spotlight's back on agriculture. And I guess my question to you is, do you see us having the ability to create jobs and fill voids? And
I think the potential is there. A lot of the things may not create as many jobs, but I think, you know, we have to explore all options and all opportunities that are there. Otherwise, we're not, you know, you've spoken about the need for change in thinking, and I think that's really an important part of it.
Well, there's a new aquaculture process going on near Albany, which I think is wonderful, because I think that fish is going to continue to be a source of protein that people feel very comfortable about. Well, this is grown under conditions that I feel very comfortable being the water versus a lake or a river or an ocean. I think that's something that represents what we should be trying to do, and his potential to market fish, maybe I'm sure he'll try a local and national, but there may be some global aspects of that production. So I think that that's a success story of what we need to strive for. So I think we got him this time?
Yeah, I know we